How's it going, guys? I am that socially awkward gamer you probably forgot existed, otherwise known as Patty Jack. We're going to talk about single player and multiplayer in video games today, and whether or not they should be separate entities from each other. So what that means is you could buy the single player of a video game or the multiplayer of a video game for a discounted price, or you could buy them together for the full $60 retail price of a game, or whatever your regional equivalent is. The reason I want to talk about this is because Far Cry 4 is doing something kind of similar to it. It's not exactly what I have in mind, but it was enough to pique my interest and kind of put this topic back in my head that I've been thinking about for a long time. When you pre-order Far Cry 4 right now, you get the single player and the co-op experience for $60, and then they've announced that the multiplayer experience for the game is going to come later down the line as DLC. One would assume that you'd have to pay some extra cash for that DLC, probably $15 or $20. I don't believe the price has been announced as of yet, so don't quote me on that. Now, this is a little bit controversial because when you look at Far Cry 3, that game came bundled with the single player and the multiplayer for your $60. And now they're taking the multiplayer out at this point, and they're going to charge you more for that experience later down the line. Now, my question is whether or not that's a good business practice. And it is a very much a gray area, because when you think about it, yeah, you might not be getting the entire game right off the bat, if multiplayer should be and is intended to be in the full release. But at the same time, if multiplayer isn't a core component of your game, is it important to have it at release? Is it important to spend all your resources and stretch them out even thinner just so you can have multiplayer at release? In my opinion, the Far Cry series as a whole isn't known for its multiplayer. It's not known for that at all. So if you decide to delay the multiplayer to work on your single player and then charge $60 for the single player experience, that's going to be a better experience, that's totally fine. And I'm okay with paying an extra $15 for Far Cry 4 multiplayer if I really want to, if I feel it's going to be worth it. As long as the single player component of the game that you get upon release is worth it. Now, this leads to another idea I've had for a while, which is whether or not games that have heavy single-player and multiplayer experiences could be cut up and then reduced in price if you only wanted one of the experiences over the other. So this is the idea that a game like Battlefield, you could buy the multiplayer, or you could buy the single-player, or you could buy both of them at the same time for your regular retail value, which would be like $60. So say someone really likes the campaign in Battlefield for some reason, and they want to play that. They don't care about the multiplayer, or someone is only about the multiplayer. They're never going to touch the campaign. They think the campaign is stupid, and they don't want it to begin with. Is it such a bad idea to separate these two things? Could you pay, say, $30 for the multiplayer, or instead pay $30 for just the single player? It does become kind of a gray area when you think about it, because if the single player or the multiplayer is lacking in a game, is it worth $30? Is it worth half of the game? So this is a bit of a gray area that developers will have to look at and say, well, okay, so if the single player isn't a big core component, if that's not what the fans want, if there's not as much to it, we could offer that for $15, and then we could offer the multiplayer maybe for $45, because that's where the core of our gameplay is. Now, would this type of business practice improve the experience and improve how a game performs in the long run? In my opinion, it has a big potential to do that, because when you look at what Far Cry 4 is doing, they're saying, well, our multiplayer isn't a core component of our series, and we don't want to waste the extra resources on it right now, so we might as well release it later for the people who do want it as a DLC. So what they could do in theory is release the multiplayer of a game like Battlefield first, and then work on a single player, because people in general, I would assume, mostly care about the multiplayer in Battlefield. So if you have your entire team working on the multiplayer, get that done, get it out the door for $45, and then work on the single player, get that done, get it out the door for $15, or whatever you want to do ratio-wise with money. I think that would benefit both sides, because you're gonna get a superior product, because you get more attention focused on each of them, rather than thinning out your developer resources and trying to get both done on time and out the door. Now, that's not to say there isn't cons to this model, because if you were to separate multiplayer and single player, If people don't like the single player and they only want to buy the multiplayer, so they buy the multiplayer for $45 and that's it, and hardly anyone buys the single player component to the game, that's going to hurt your profits, obviously. So this is probably one of the big reasons that this hasn't been really attempted before. Because unless you have a game that people want, in general, to play both the multiplayer, the single player, or whatever other component you have in the game, then people are going to buy one over the other, and you're not going to make your full $60 profit that is pretty much the industry standard at this point. This issue should be almost solved, though, based on my last point, to where you have more developer resources going to both parts of the game. So if both parts of your game end up being better than they would have if they were combined together, then in theory you would have consumers more interested in buying both parts. But again, this is a big risk that developers obviously don't want to take, because if it doesn't work out, then they are going to be losing a lot of money if people are only paying $45 for the game when they've spent all this extra money creating another component that no one even cares about. Let me know in the comments what you think. I want to hear everyone's opinion. I don't really have a strong opinion either way. This is very much just to make a discussion. So let me know what you think. Please be articulate, please be respectful in the comments, and I'll do my best to reply to as many as I can. I am PattyJack. I will see you guys next time.